It began on a quiet evening in Crestwood Hills, a place that prided itself on safety, beauty, and perfection. But that night, perfection cracked under flashing blue and red lights. Police cruisers lined the street, their sirens cutting through the still air. A black family stood on their own front lawn, hands raised, their faces caught in the harsh wash of patrol lights. The father, Marcus Lane, stood tall in front of his wife and 2 children. His calm presence contrasted sharply with the tension swirling around them. "Officer," he said evenly, "why are we being questioned in front of our own home?" The lead officer hesitated, his voice uncertain. "Sir, we got a report of suspicious individuals possibly breaking into this house." 10-year-old Leah gripped her father's hand tightly. "Dad," she whispered, "why do they think we're robbers?" "This is our house." Marcus's eyes shifted across the street, landing on the woman holding her phone high, recording everything. Her name was Evelyn Price, the neighbor who had made the call. She had no idea she'd just dialed 911 on the city's newly appointed chief of police. 3 days earlier, the Lanes had driven through Crestwood's arched stone gates for the first time. Their SUV rolled past rows of trimmed hedges and white-columned houses that looked like something out of a magazine. "We're home," Marcus said softly, pulling into the driveway. He wore worn jeans and a faded gray t-shirt, not the suit that hung freshly pressed in his garment bag, the one he planned to wear Monday morning when he'd be introduced as the city's new chief. His son, Caleb, 14 and restless, jumped out first. "This place is huge," he said, basketball already in hand, eyes scanning for a driveway to shoot hoops. His wife, Naomi, stepped out next, adjusting her blouse. "We're unpacking tonight. No disappearing into the neighborhood yet." And then came Leah, clutching a book on astronomy. "Can I at least see my room?" Across the street, Evelyn watched from behind her lace curtains. Her lips pressed thin as she eyed the family unloading furniture, a leather sofa, framed art, and boxes marked kitchen and books. Her phone buzzed. It was her neighbor, Mr. Doyle, retrieving his mail. "Did you see the new folks?" Evelyn asked, motioning discreetly. "They bought the Jacksons' old house," Doyle replied. "Paid in full, I heard." Evelyn's eyebrows arched. "In full? That must be nice." Her voice carried a note, that mix of politeness and suspicion that never quite hid the prejudice underneath. Inside, Naomi unpacked family photos. Marcus in uniform, shaking hands with mayors, standing behind podiums receiving awards, but for now those memories stayed boxed. They wanted to settle quietly, to just be a family. Through the open window, Marcus could hear the faint murmurs of Evelyn and Doyle across the street. He said nothing. He'd heard it before in different places under different disguises, but Naomi's eyes met his, and without words they both understood. The real unpacking would take more than moving boxes. The next day came bright and hot. The family decided to cool off at the community pool. Caleb raced ahead, eager to dive in, while Leah splashed happily nearby. Marcus and Naomi sat under an umbrella, grateful for one peaceful moment. Then Evelyn appeared. Designer sunglasses, perfect posture, a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Excuse me," she said sweetly. "Are you visiting someone here?" Naomi's smile froze. "No, we moved in yesterday. The house on Birch Lane." "Oh," Evelyn said, pretending surprise. "Well, this pool is for residents only. We've had issues with outsiders." Marcus rose slowly, extending his hand. "Marcus Lane, we live here." Evelyn glanced at his hand, then at her phone. "We keep a directory for security purposes. Mind if I get a photo?" Before Naomi could reply, Evelyn snapped a picture, no consent given. Marcus noticed the other white families lounging by the pool. Not one had been questioned. Not one photographed. He caught a glimpse of Evelyn's phone screen as she typed, "New black family on Birch Lane. Seem nice enough, but keep an eye out." Naomi inhaled sharply. "Let's just go," she whispered. Marcus shook his head. "No, we belong here, Naomi. That's exactly why we're staying." 3 days later, as the sun dipped low, the Lanes returned from dinner to see flashing lights dancing across their windows. 2 patrol cars sat in front of their home. "Stay calm," Marcus said quietly. "Follow my lead." The officers approached. "We received a call about suspicious activity," one explained. Marcus replied evenly, "We live here. We moved in earlier this week." As he spoke, neighbors gathered on porches, whispering, filming, judging. Naomi's hand trembled slightly as she recorded the encounter herself. "For our protection," she said softly. The officer finally nodded. "Sorry for the misunderstanding. Everything checks out." Across the street, Evelyn lowered her binoculars, her lips pressed into a thin line. Inside, Leah burst into tears. "Why did they think we were stealing, Daddy?" Marcus pulled her close. "Sometimes," he said gently, "people see what they expect instead of what's real." That night, as the house fell silent, Marcus sat in his study, replaying the footage Naomi had taken. He watched the hesitation in the officer's eyes, the coded words, the silent bias. He'd studied this for years, but this time, it wasn't a case file. It was personal. He picked up his phone and called his mentor, Chief Owens. "It happened," Marcus said simply. Owens exhaled. "To you?" "To us." A pause stretched across the line. "What are you going to do about it?" Owens asked. Marcus's answer came steady and sure. "I'm going to change it." From the inside, as the clock struck midnight, Marcus opened his laptop and began typing a new document. Policy draft. Bias response reform. Case study in Crestwood Hills. It was the start of something that would shake an entire city. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the kitchen blinds, but the warmth didn't reach Naomi's face. She moved quietly around the counter, pouring coffee with slow precision, her mind replaying the flashing lights and raised voices from the night before. Marcus sat at the table, scrolling through departmental files on his laptop. "Are you really working already?" she asked. He looked up. "I'm documenting everything. Every word, every moment. This can't just disappear into memory." Naomi nodded, though her jaw tightened. It shouldn't have happened at all. Outside, Caleb bounced his basketball in the driveway, the steady rhythm echoing down the still street. Leah sat on the steps, humming softly as she arranged her science books. From the corner of his eye, Marcus saw movement across the street. Evelyn in her garden gloves, watering flowers that didn't need watering. Her phone was in her other hand, watching. By afternoon, another incident. Caleb's basketball bounced too far and rolled into Evelyn's flower bed. The moment he jogged over to retrieve it, Evelyn emerged from her front door as if she had been waiting. "That's the third time you've done that," she said sharply, though it was the first. Caleb froze. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'll be more careful. You people need to learn to respect other people's property." Marcus stepped outside, calm and deliberate. "Is there a problem here?" Evelyn's tone shifted instantly. "Oh, not at all. Just reminding the young man to be careful." Marcus extended his hand. "Marcus Lane. I don't believe we've been properly introduced." Evelyn hesitated, then shook it lightly. "Evelyn Price, nice to meet you." Her smile didn't touch her eyes. When she turned back toward her door, Marcus could see her lift her phone, snapping another picture of Caleb as she walked away. At dinner, the family sat quietly. Caleb pushed food around his plate. "She called us you people," he said finally. "What does that even mean?" Marcus sighed. "It means she's afraid of what she doesn't understand. But you don't let that change who you are." Naomi reached over and squeezed her son's hand. "We're going to show them that we belong here. By living well, by being exactly who we are." But Evelyn's suspicion didn't rest. That night, she hosted a neighborhood watch emergency meeting in her living room. A dozen neighbors gathered around her coffee table while she flipped through photos on her phone. "I'm not saying they've done anything wrong," she said, lowering her voice as though she were sharing state secrets. "But we should stay alert. You can never be too careful." Mr. Doyle frowned. "You think the chief of police would live here if they weren't who they said they were?" She scoffed. "Chief of police? They're too young for that. You'll see. Something's off." 2 days later, flyers appeared in mailboxes. Neighborhood safety guidelines printed neatly at the top. The examples listed: unfamiliar people moving furniture, groups of teenagers loitering, residents behaving suspiciously. Looked innocent enough until Marcus read the bolded lines: unverified moving activity. Unfamiliar vehicles. Teenagers of unknown residents, he knew what it meant. It was a coded invitation for people like Evelyn to keep calling 911. Naomi set the paper down, her voice cold. "This isn't safety. It's harassment." "Not yet," Marcus said, folding the flyer and tucking it into a folder labeled documentation. "But it will be if we let it grow." The next morning, the doorbell rang. Standing there were Evelyn and two other neighbors, all wearing navy polo shirts embroidered with the words, Crestwood Hills Watch. "Good morning," Evelyn said brightly. "We're introducing our new neighborhood security program." Marcus stepped aside. "Come in." The three of them filed into the living room, eyes scanning every surface as though cataloging evidence. "You have a lovely home," Evelyn said, gaze lingering on the framed photographs. "Very distinctive." "Thank you," Marcus replied evenly. "Now tell me about your program." Evelyn launched into a practice speech about vigilance, about keeping Crestwood Hills safe from outsiders. "We all have to do our part," she finished, her voice silky. "We know you understand." Marcus nodded slowly. "I do. But I also know that photographing minors and distributing those photos without consent is a violation of privacy laws. You might want to be careful about that." The man beside Evelyn shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should," Marcus continued. "And organizing surveillance without training can escalate situations." "Are your volunteers trained in de-escalation?" Evelyn stiffened. "We don't need training to recognize when people don't belong." Marcus's tone softened, but his words cut through the air. "Don't belong? Based on what?" The silence that followed stretched until she looked away. "You're twisting my words." "No," he said. "I'm clarifying them." She stood abruptly. "Well, we'll be watching, Mr. Lane, for everyone's safety." After the door closed, Naomi walked over, anger flashing in her eyes. "She's testing us." "I know," Marcus said quietly. "But she doesn't realize what's coming." That evening, his phone buzzed with a message from the city office. Press conference confirmed for Monday at 11 a.m. Naomi read it over his shoulder. "So tomorrow everyone will know?" "Yes," Marcus said, a faint smile forming. "Tomorrow the truth walks through this neighborhood wearing a badge." He looked out the window. Across the street, Evelyn was pruning her roses again, as if cutting back flowers could somehow keep change from blooming. Marcus closed his laptop and said softly, "Let her watch. She's about to learn who she called the police on." The sun dipped behind the rooftops, painting the street gold. Inside, the Lane family prepared for the morning that would rewrite the balance of power in Crestwood Hills forever. Morning broke with the quiet hum of sprinklers and the faint rustle of newspapers landing on driveways. Inside the Lane household, the air was thick with purpose. Marcus stood before the mirror, adjusting the collar of his uniform. The polished badge on his chest gleamed against the morning light. Years of service, sacrifice, and struggle rested in that shine. Naomi appeared behind him, her reflection calm but proud. "You look ready," she said softly. He nodded once. "It's not about looking ready. It's about being ready." From the doorway, Leah peeked in, her small face glowing with awe. "Dad, you look like a superhero." Marcus smiled gently. "Superheroes wear capes. I wear responsibility." Downstairs, Caleb scrolled on his phone, half listening to the morning news. His head lifted when the anchor's voice changed tone. "Today, the city will introduce its new police chief, a decorated officer and reform advocate, known for his integrity and leadership." Caleb's brow furrowed. "Dad, that's you." Marcus took a deep breath, his hand resting on his son's shoulder. "Yes, and it's time everyone knows." Naomi watched as he stepped toward the door, the moment feeling heavier than any goodbye before. "They'll announce your name in 15 minutes, she reminded him. "And the email goes out citywide." He leaned in, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "You know what to do at 11:30. She smiled knowingly. "Everything's ready." Outside, the neighborhood still looked peaceful, unaware that its illusion of control was about to shatter. Marcus climbed into his car, the morning sun glinting off his windshield as he drove away. At each security checkpoint leading to headquarters, officers straightened and saluted. Some whispered his name, realizing for the first time who he truly was. Back at home, Naomi moved through the kitchen with deliberate calm. She arranged pastries on platters, set mugs on trays, and checked the clock. At exactly 11:15, the doorbell rang. Frank Doyle stood there first, holding his phone awkwardly. "Got your message," he said. "Coffee with the new neighbors." "Come in," Naomi replied warmly. "You're right on time." One by one, more neighbors filtered in, drawn by curiosity and polite obligation. They filled the living room, murmuring, exchanging small talk. Evelyn arrived last, her posture stiff, her tone clipped. "What's this about?" she asked, glancing around suspiciously. Naomi offered her a cup. Just thought it was time to properly introduce ourselves. Evelyn declined the coffee, arms crossed. We've already met. Naomi checked her watch, then smiled. Actually, perfect timing. There's something I'd like you all to see. Without waiting for a response, she turned on the television. The channel flickered to a live broadcast, the mayor standing at a podium draped with the city's seal. Today marks a turning point for our city, the mayor said, his voice carrying conviction. It's my honor to introduce our new chief of police, a leader committed to fairness, reform, and accountability. Please welcome Chief Marcus Lane. The room froze. Every eye turned toward the screen. Gasps filled the air as Marcus stepped to the podium, uniform immaculate, voice steady. Naomi turned up the volume. I am deeply honored to serve this city, Marcus began. But service means more than protecting property. It means protecting dignity. True safety isn't just about preventing crime. It's about ensuring every person feels safe simply living where they belong. Evelyn's face drained of color. Her fingers tightened around her phone. That's your husband? She whispered. Naomi nodded calmly. Yes, that's my husband. On the screen, Marcus continued, his voice commanding yet calm. Too often, fear and bias have shaped how communities view one another. Starting today, we are changing that. Our department will implement new policies to retrain officers on responding to biased calls. Calls made not because of behavior, but because of prejudice. The room was silent, except for his voice. His words carried the weight of truth. We will begin by reviewing the way suspicious person reports are handled. Every officer will receive new training in bias recognition and community engagement. Because no one should have to prove they belong in their own home. Evelyn sank into the nearest chair, speechless. Frank looked down, guilt flickering in his eyes. The silence was heavy, the kind that forces reflection. Marcus concluded, Justice begins not in the courtroom, but in our neighborhoods. Change starts when courage replaces silence. As the applause erupted from the televised crowd, Naomi turned off the TV and faced the stunned room. My husband wanted me to personally invite you all to his new community program, she said evenly. It's focused on improving understanding between residents and law enforcement. He said some of your calls were instructive. Evelyn looked at her, eyes wide with disbelief. You knew? Naomi met her gaze, calm and unwavering. I didn't need to know who you were calling the police on. You did, the neighbors began to murmur. Frank stood awkwardly, setting his coffee cup down. I should, get going, he said, backing toward the door. Others followed, each avoiding eye contact with Evelyn as they left. Evelyn remained seated, frozen in place, her phone buzzing in her lap. Naomi noticed the message flashing on the screen. Urgent. Meeting requested by Chief Lane's office regarding recent neighborhood incidents. The irony was sharp enough to cut the air. Naomi stepped closer, her tone firm but not cruel. You said you'd be watching, Evelyn. Well, now it's time for you to be seen. For the first time since moving to Crestwood Hills, the Lanes weren't the ones under the microscope. The truth had turned its lens the other way. That afternoon, Marcus stood before a room of officers and city officials, replaying body camera footage on a large screen, the night his family had been questioned. The silence in the room was palpable as the clip ended on the image of him standing on his lawn, hands raised under police lights. He turned to face his command team. What you just saw isn't an isolated event. It's a symptom. And symptoms tell us where the disease lives. A captain spoke hesitantly. Sir, the officers followed current protocol. Exactly, Marcus replied. That's the problem. He brought up a slide of statistics. 78% of suspicious person calls in majority white neighborhoods target people of color. 65% lead to no crime at all. We don't need to punish these officers. We need to fix the system that trained them to see suspicion where there is none. The room buzzed with quiet agreement. Another lieutenant raised her hand. Sir, this won't be easy. Some officers won't like it. Marcus nodded. Change never starts easy, but it always starts somewhere, and it starts here. That evening, as twilight settled over the neighborhood, Evelyn sat alone in her living room, phone in hand. The news replayed Marcus's speech over and over, his words echoing through her once silent home. For the first time, she didn't feel safe, not because of her neighbors, but because of what she now saw in herself. Outside, Crestwood Hills looked unchanged. The same lawns, the same fences, the same quiet streets. But beneath that calm, something had shifted. The story of who belonged here had begun to rewrite itself, and this time it wasn't being written by fear. The following week brought a new kind of tension to Crestwood Hills. It wasn't loud or chaotic anymore. It was quieter, heavier, like the pause between lightning and thunder. Evelyn Price sat in a chair she could no longer relax in. Her phone vibrated on the table again. Another notification, another headline. Her name appeared beneath it now. Local resident under investigation for misuse of emergency services. She'd stopped answering calls from the Homeowners Association. Even Frank had stopped replying to her messages. The same people who once nodded approvingly when she spoke about keeping the neighborhood safe now crossed the street when she appeared. That morning, she received an official letter requesting her presence at the police department. It wasn't a friendly invitation. By noon, Evelyn found herself sitting in a gray-walled room, facing two officers across a metal table. Her jewelry glittered under the harsh fluorescent lights and armor of denial. "Thank you for coming in, Ms. Price," said a calm voice. "I'm Lieutenant Harris, Internal Affairs. This is Detective Min." Evelyn tried to smile, but it faltered. "I was told this was about community coordination." Harris opened a folder thick with papers. "In a sense, yes. We're reviewing a series of police reports connected to your address. 17 calls in the past 8 months. 17? She repeated, eyes wide. "I was being vigilant. Isn't that what a neighborhood watch is for?" Detective Min tilted the folder toward her. "Let's look together." On the table, they spread out the list. Each entry bore a date, time, and short summary. Unknown male unloading boxes. Possible trespassing. 2 teenagers walking home. Loitering. Delivery driver taking photos. And finally, family moving into residence. Suspicious activity. Evelyn's throat tightened. "I didn't mean any harm." Harris gestured toward the monitor in the corner. A video began to play, a compilation of security camera clips. Landscapers eating lunch in their truck. A teenage boy retrieving a basketball. The lanes unloading furniture. Normal moments framed by suspicion. "This is what we found," Harris said quietly. "Every single call resulted in no criminal activity." Evelyn shifted in her seat. "You're twisting this." "I was protecting my neighborhood." "From what exactly?" Min asked. "Because our data shows you consistently reported people of color doing ordinary things." Her mouth opened, then closed. "You're calling me racist." "We're calling you accountable," Harris said. Evelyn's composure cracked. "Am I being charged?" "Not yet," Min replied. "Commissioner Lane has offered an alternative, one that focuses on education instead of punishment." The door opened, and another officer entered, placing a single document on the table. Evelyn recognized Marcus Lane's signature at the bottom before she even read it. "A diversion agreement," Harris explained. "You'll attend a bias training program and complete community service with the new Neighborhood Integration Initiative. In return, no charges." Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper.
"He arranged this?"
"Yes," Harris said. "He asked us to tell you this isn't about punishment. It's about understanding." Her hand trembled as she signed her name. The pen left a thin trail of ink that looked like surrender. That night, the news spread like wildfire. Local channels replayed the clip of the Lanes' confrontation under flashing lights, now paired with Evelyn's face from across the street. Online, her name became a symbol. Some defended her, most condemned her. Accountability in Crestwood began trending before sunset. Her employer placed her on leave. Messages poured in, some angry, some mocking, others full of the same fear she once carried toward others. She turned off her phone and sat alone in the silence she had created. Days passed. The neighborhood felt different now. Conversations grew careful. Doors that had once closed firmly now lingered open. People waved across lawns who had never spoken before. At police headquarters, Marcus was in constant motion. Reform meetings filled his days. He walked through halls lined with officers, past bulletin boards covered in charts and flow diagrams. In conference rooms, he spoke not just about law enforcement, but about humanity. "We're changing how we respond to calls," he explained to a room of commanders. "From now on, dispatchers will ask for specific behaviors before sending officers. What exactly is the person doing? Not what do they look like?" He pointed to the screen, showing a branching decision chart. If the answer isn't based on a concrete action, the call is logged for review, not response. He watched as officers nodded, some with understanding, others with hesitation. One captain raised a hand. "Sir, won't this slow down response times?" Marcus shook his head. "It'll speed up justice. Fewer wasted calls, fewer innocent people humiliated, and more trust built where fear used to live." In another room, a group of trainees sat in front of body camera footage. The Lanes footage. They watched Marcus himself being questioned in his driveway. "This is what bias looks like when you're the one on the receiving end," Marcus told them. "Remember it, feel it, because the next time someone calls you for suspicious activity, you'll be the one deciding what that means." Weeks passed, and data started to shift. Reports of suspicious persons dropped across the city. Training attendance hit record highs. Officers began volunteering for community listening sessions. At one such session, Marcus sat in the back as residents shared their experiences, being followed while jogging, questioned for walking dogs ignored in stores. He listened silently, letting the weight of their words fill the space. A man stood up near the end. "I used to live in Crestwood Hills," he said. "I moved out because of how I was treated. Hearing what's happening now, it gives me hope. Hope." That was the word Marcus carried home that night. When he stepped inside, the scent of dinner met him, warm and grounding. Naomi was setting plates, Leah humming softly as she mixed juice. Caleb sat at the counter, homework open, laughter returning to his voice. "How was your day, Chief?" Naomi teased lightly. Marcus smiled. "Productive. Maybe even meaningful." Outside, a soft knock came at the door. Naomi opened it to find Evelyn standing there, shoulders hunched, holding a tray of homemade cookies like a fragile peace offering. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said quietly, "but I wanted to thank you for the chance to learn instead of lose everything." Naomi took the tray, studying her carefully. "Learning is a good place to start." Evelyn nodded, her eyes glistening. "It's strange. The more I face what I did, the freer I feel." Marcus stepped into view. "Accountability does that. It breaks the weight we hide under." Evelyn met his eyes for the first time without fear. "If you ever need help with your program, I'd like to be part of it." Marcus hesitated, then extended his hand. "Then start by showing up. Change isn't built in meetings. It's built in moments like this." She shook his hand, tentatively but sincerely, and walked away into the evening light. Naomi closed the door softly, leaning her head against it. "Do you think she really means it?" Marcus exhaled slowly. "I think she's beginning to." And for the first time since moving to Crestwood Hills, the night felt calm in a different way. Not like silence before a storm, but like the air that follows it. The kind where the world smells like rain and something new is ready to grow. 3 months had passed since the night the lights flashed across their windows. Time had softened the sharp edges of that memory, but it hadn't erased it. It had turned it into something else, a seed for change that was beginning to grow roots across an entire city. Crestwood Hills looked different now. Not in appearance, the lawns were still trimmed, the hedges still sculpted, but in spirit. The air felt lighter, the conversations less guarded. Where suspicion once lingered, connection was taking its place, slow but sure. The Lane family was hosting their first neighborhood block party. Long tables stretched across their driveway, covered in food and bright tablecloths. Laughter carried through the warm summer air. Naomi moved between groups of neighbors, her natural warmth drawing people in. Leah led a cluster of kids making volcanoes from baking soda and vinegar, shrieking with delight as foam bubbled over. Caleb organized a basketball game on the cul-de-sac, his teammates now including Frank's son and others who had once avoided him. Marcus stood by the grill, the smell of charcoal and barbecue mixing with the hum of conversation. Every now and then, someone from the neighborhood would wander up to him, not out of obligation but curiosity. They asked questions about the police reform program, about how to get involved, about how they could help. Each question reminded him that progress wasn't made in sweeping gestures. It was built one conversation at a time. Across the street, Evelyn stood at the edge of her driveway holding a covered dish, her nerves visible in the stiffness of her shoulders. For several minutes she didn't move. Then she took a deep breath and began the slow walk toward the gathering. Naomi noticed her first. Setting down her glass, she walked over to meet her halfway. "You came?" Naomi said gently. Evelyn nodded, holding out the dish. "It's just baked apples. I wasn't sure what people would like." "I'm glad you brought them," Naomi replied, accepting the tray. That's all anyone really needs to bring, something to share. Evelyn gave a small smile, the kind that trembles on its way to becoming real. I wanted to say this in person. I'm sorry. For all of it. For what I assumed and for what it caused. Naomi studied her face for a long moment. You've been doing the training? Evelyn nodded. Every week. It's hard. They make you look at yourself, not the world. But it's changing me. I see things I didn't before. Marcus approached, wiping his hands on a towel. Evelyn straightened instinctively, her words catching for a moment. Chief Lane, she began, then corrected herself. Marcus. He smiled faintly. Evelyn, I just wanted to thank you. I don't deserve your patience, but I appreciate it. He looked at her for a moment before speaking. No one deserves forgiveness automatically, but everyone deserves the chance to grow into it. Her eyes glistened. I've started helping with the welcome committee. New families moving in. I thought, maybe I could make their start easier than yours. Naomi's expression softened. That's a good beginning. Thank you, Evelyn said, her voice low. I'll keep trying. As she walked away to mingle with the others, Naomi glanced at her husband. You think she's really changing? I think she's learning, Marcus said. And learning is the start of change. The evening deepened, the orange sky fading into indigo. Lights strung across the driveways began to glow softly, their reflections dancing on the windows. Music played somewhere in the background. People laughed more freely now, and children darted between tables with the energy of a world that still believed in fairness. Later, as the crowd thinned and the last plates were cleared, Marcus sat on the porch beside Naomi. Leah and Caleb were inside, arguing playfully over who got the last scoop of ice cream. Across the street, Evelyn lingered by her door, waving goodnight to a neighbor she used to avoid. Naomi leaned her head against Marcus's shoulder. It feels different tonight. It is, he said. Something shifted. She smiled softly. You changed more than a policy, Marcus. You changed how people see each other. He looked out at the glowing street, at the people who were once strangers divided by silence. No, he said quietly. They changed themselves. I just gave them the chance. His phone buzzed with a message from the department, an update from Deputy Chief Harris. Reports of biased 911 calls had dropped 18% across the city. 18% fewer families questioned for existing. 18% fewer children watching their parents prove they belong. Naomi saw the message and smiled. That's something. It's a start, Marcus said. From inside, Leah called out, Dad, come taste my science volcano. He laughed, standing and offering Naomi his hand. Let's go see what our little scientist made. They stepped inside together, the porch light fading behind them. The laughter of their children mixed with the lingering sounds of the block party outside. A new kind of harmony for a neighborhood learning how to be better. And for the first time since they'd moved in, Marcus realized something profound. Safety wasn't built by walls or gates or locks. It was built by trust, by understanding, by courage to face the truth and still choose compassion. He looked through the window at the street beyond, now filled with life, and knew this was only the beginning. The summer gave way to a crisp golden autumn. Trees along Crestwood streets turned brilliant shades of amber and red, scattering leaves like quiet confetti. The air carried a different kind of peace now. Not silence, not tension, but balance. Marcus sat in his office at police headquarters. The skyline of the city spread wide beyond the window. The reforms had taken root faster than anyone expected. His whiteboard was filled with notes and numbers. Call response metrics, new training schedules, departmental feedback from across the precincts. But today's meeting wasn't just another progress check. It was the culmination of months of change. The conference room slowly filled with officers, community leaders, and civil rights advocates. At the front of the room, Marcus adjusted the microphone. 6 months ago, he began, we stood at a crossroads. We had to decide whether to keep defending the old systems or build new ones that reflect who we claim to be. He paused, scanning the room. Today we have the first real proof that change works. A slide appeared behind him, bar graphs and data that told a quiet revolution in numbers. Reports of biased calls down 32%. Community satisfaction up nearly 40%. Complaint resolutions faster, fairer, more transparent. But more than numbers, he said. We've started to rebuild something harder to measure. Trust. Applause rose from the room, genuine and sustained. When it faded, Marcus added, We still have far to go. But this is the start of a new story for our city. Afterward, as the crowd dispersed, Chief Owens approached him, pride in his eyes. You've done what most people only talk about, he said. Marcus smiled faintly. It wasn't me alone. It was everyone willing to see the truth and not turn away. Owens nodded. Even the ones who made the mistakes? Especially them, Marcus said. That's where real change starts. That afternoon, Marcus returned home early. The smell of cinnamon drifted from the kitchen where Naomi and Leah were baking. Caleb was in the driveway, teaching a group of younger kids how to dribble a basketball. Laughter echoed down the street. Naomi looked up from the counter as Marcus entered. Big day? She asked. Historic, he replied, pulling her into a hug. The city's changing faster than anyone thought. She smiled into his chest. So are we. He glanced out the window and saw Evelyn walking up the street with a folder in hand. She waved when she saw him. Naomi smiled. Looks like she's still keeping her promise. Evelyn joined them on the porch, slightly out of breath. I just came from the community center, she said. We're launching the new Neighborhood Welcome Initiative next month. Real orientation, real conversations. She hesitated before continuing. Would you and Naomi speak at the first one? Naomi nodded immediately. Of course, Evelyn's relief was visible. I never thought I'd say this, but I think people are finally listening. Marcus studied her for a moment. The woman who once hid behind her curtains now stood in the open, part of the very change she used to fear. Keep going, he said, because listening is where understanding begins. The three of them stood in quiet agreement, the evening light painting the world in soft gold. Across the street, a group of children of every color and background chased one another through piles of leaves, laughter rising above the wind. Later that night, after the children had gone to bed, Marcus and Naomi sat on the porch swing, watching the streetlights flicker on one by one. She broke the silence first. Do you ever think about that night? Every day, he admitted. Not because of what happened, but because of what it started. Naomi leaned against him. You turned humiliation into purpose. You didn't fight back with anger. You built something better. He took her hand gently. We built it together. For a long moment, they simply sat there, listening to the hum of the neighborhood that had once judged them and now embraced them. A gentle breeze carried the scent of rain and earth, the kind of scent that comes before renewal. From somewhere down the street came the sound of Caleb's laughter, followed by Leah's voice reading aloud from one of her books. Evelyn's porch light flicked on. Frank waved from his yard. The world felt imperfect, but alive in its imperfection. Marcus looked out at Crestwood Hills and felt a quiet certainty settle inside him. Real safety had never been about fear. It was about connection. Not walls, not watch groups, not silent judgment, just people choosing to see each other clearly. Naomi turned to him, her eyes soft. What happens next? He smiled, looking toward the horizon where the last light of day met the dark. Next, he said, we keep going. We keep building the kind of world our children won't have to explain. And as the wind rustled through the trees, the street that once divided began to sound like a single rhythm, a neighborhood, a community, a promise finally kept.